Hey there, today I am skipping ahead to one of our newest reveals with Mr. Sinister to talk about all of his exciting abilities. My name is Nate, and welcome to the Gamers Guild. So, I'm skipping right over some of the other recently revealed characters because I'm really excited about our latest mutants in a way that I'm just not as excited for the other characters. So, Iron Fist, Luke Cage, and the Ladies of Hydra will still be getting their own videos, just not today. I will say though that with so many up-and-coming products, if you have a few that you know you want, I recommend taking a look at Tritech's games. Their pre-order price takes 20% off of retail, and then you can use the code TRITEXGGCP5 at checkout for an additional 5% off for a total of 25%, which is really solid. As well, thanks to Tritex, I'm able to do a monthly giveaway. To enter, all you need to do is leave a comment down in the description of the video and be subscribed to the channel. And with that, let's talk about Mr. Sinister, who was formerly known as Nathaniel Essex. He has 6 stamina, moves medium on a 50mm base, is size 3 and 4 threat. He has 3 physical and energy defense and 4 mystic defense. So overall, some decent durability at a glance. And he is no slouch on offense either. His strike is an energy attack that has a range of 3, strength of 5 for 0 power that allows him to gain power equal to the damage dealt. So nothing crazy here, but range 3 is always nice on the builder. But here's where things get a little bit more spicy. Genetic Splicing is a beam 4 mystic attack with a strength of 5 for 1 power. As well, after each attack is resolved, Sinister will gain 1 genetic sample token. What do you do with these tokens? Well, lots of different things, as you will soon see, but first let's talk about how good this attack is on its own. A range 4 beam attack for only 1 power is a great rate, especially because it acts as a different kind of builder for Sinister. And because Mr. Sin is guaranteed to have 1 genetic sample per enemy character instead of having to rely on the attack dealing damage, this lets him replenish his tokens very quickly, especially since he can only hold up to 3. So the first of many things that these samples can do though is increase the attack range of his next attack. Reincumbent Disintegration is another mystic attack. This one has a area X range, where X is the number of genetic samples Sinister has at the time of the attack. It has a strength of 6 for 6 power. So in addition to this maxing out to be our first ever Area 3 attack, it also has the genetic burst that triggers if you roll a hit, crit, and a wild. It'll deal 1 damage to each enemy character within range of the attack, which isn't a huge deal at range 1 and maybe not even at range 2, but with range 3, Sinister can easily already be hitting 3 to 4 enemy models. One of the other great things is that this attack doesn't spend those genetic samples, the range is just equal to the amount held. But don't worry, 3 of his superpowers give him ways to spin the tokens to his advantage. First up is Engineered Perfection. It is an active superpower that costs no power, but you can remove any number of genetic samples from him, and for each sample removed, Sinister can remove a status condition. This ability can only be used once per turn. So this is a great way to shed off a couple of nasty status conditions like Shock and Stagger before Sinister starts his turn at all. His next active power is Genetic Negation. This one costs 1 power and 1 sample, but for that price you can choose 1 enemy character within range 3 and apply the Root special condition, which isn't something we have seen since Groot over a year ago. Root, as a reminder, forces enemy characters to pay 1 power before they are able to activate any active or reactive superpowers. So to some characters this hardly does anything, but other characters can crumple under the weight of this additional tax. So while it's not something you will always be using, the times that you do use it, it's going to be really strong. And then for his last active power, Mr. Essex has such fun little playthings. For 2 power, Sinister chooses an enemy character within range 3 and advances that character short. This power can thankfully only be used once per turn. One of the best control elements in the game is being able to make your opponent advance. And well, even though it's only limited to once per turn, Sinister still has access to it, which helps obviously with control, but in other regards as well since he has area and beam attacks. Sinister's single reactive power, though, is called Molecular Regeneration. It costs no power, but will cost him those genetic samples. It says, whenever Sinister would suffer damage, he may use this superpower. Remove any number of genetic samples from him, reduce the amount of damage suffered by 1 for each sample removed this way. This is probably the best use of the tokens because it turns each of them into an extra point of stamina that Sinister can keep getting back and reusing over and over. And what's also great about this ability is that it doesn't have a limit to a minimum of 1, and it doesn't even have to be an enemy effect. So these can be used to stop Cosmic Cube damage as much as it can to stop Cyclops' optic beam. This really helps put his durability over the top as long as he has time to replenish his sample supply before getting attacked repeatedly. And finally, to wrap up his superpowers, Sinister has 2 innate ones. DNA Database limits his sample supply to 3, and he also has the Flight keyword. There's only one change on his injured side, and that is that he drops down to 5 stamina, so nothing too crazy there. Now let's talk about just how good Sinister is. And the short answer is he's really good, but he won't be a model you can just put on the table and instantly start getting the best results out of him. He has a lot going for him. All of his attacks have good uses. The strike is really going to be his main source of power generation, so having range 3 there is really nice. His other attacks being Mystic are really great, as it is always good to have access to a Panther or a Cap Buster on your team, but they're also able to be used well in different situations. You can combine these beam and area attacks with his such fun little playthings, and Sinister can get one more person under that beam most of the time. The ways he can use his samples are all good and relevant even if most of the time you'll want to make sure you usually have the full 3 at the end of his activation so that he can be as durable as possible. So he is shaping up to be a really well-rounded piece that is going to be annoyingly difficult to bring down if I had to guess. But there is always some bad to go with the good. For Sinister, that comes down to 2 things: his power supply and how we the players use him on the table. Just at a glance, I can only assume that the 1 power you get every turn is going to be dedicated toward either a turn 1 objective play or being able to use genetic splicing. Because without those samples, 3 of his 4 superpowers are dead and his area attack becomes very, very sad. But before I dive into that too much, let's focus on the power problem. So on turn 1, he either interacts with an objective or gets off a very not optimal beam attack, or he just saves it for the next turn. You probably want to activate him probably earlier on in round 2 so that he can move and get a beam to get his protection tokens on him. So at that point you either have 1 or no power to do other things, and when you take damage you want to spend those samples. Which means Sinister isn't gaining any power. So he is a bit of a power-starved character, but even when he is low on power during his turns, he'll still be able to function and be at least a little bit productive thanks to that range 3, but he certainly won't be living up to his potential. And that brings me back to when you play with Sinister, activation timing is key. He's very similar to characters like Hela or Carnage in that respect, where he's able to, in a way, get 3 expendable hit points on his turn, but once those have been burned through, he is a pretty vulnerable character with his 3s on defense for the most common attack types. So I think an oversimplified game plan is to only activate him when he is out or low on those genetic samples. So if at the end of the previous round your opponent depleted his supply, a first activation for Sinister may not be out of the question. But as with these characters that have reactive defensive tech, it is just going to take some time on the table to figure out the best way to use them. And so with the good and the bad out of the way, I want to talk about affiliations. And really at this point I have no idea where, if anywhere, he may be affiliated. My 2 guesses are Brotherhood and Cabal, if the other evil mutants are anything to go off of, but Sinister is usually not associated with the Brotherhood, and his levels of mutant superiority makes Magneto look a little bit tame. But both of these places would be great for Sinister, as it would help with his power supply problem. In Cabal, suddenly his beam will likely pay for itself and then some, and in Brotherhood, a trickle of 1 or 2 extra powers should be all Sinister really needs. And while Sinister doesn't bring a throw to Magneto's Brotherhood, he does bring some much needed attack variety with his energy and mystic damage types. So let me know down in the comments, what affiliations do you think Sinister will be a part of and why? And again, as long as you're subscribed to the channel, that will also enter you in this month's giveaway. Here at the end, I want to give an extra special thank you to all of the members of the Guild Hall who are supporting what I am doing with the channel. There are always more and more things I am wanting to try to do, and because of this extra support, I'm getting to do some of those things. If you're interested in supporting the channel, check out the links down in the description of the Guild's Patreon page and Tritech's game page, where you can use that discount code to let them know I sent you their way. Thank you all for watching, and until next time, keep on gaming.